Welcome to the Soulfull Sound Podcast. This podcast is about celebrating the leaders, teachers, and coaches who guide fellow humans to connect, heal, and discover themselves so they can express their gifts into the world. I am Simone Niles, a coach, sound healer, vocalist, and author. Thank you for being here with me today. As always, we're back with an amazing guest. Today I am joined by the wonderful Stephen Washington, who is the author of Recovering You, Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. As a former professional dancer who performed on Broadway in Disney's The Lion King, his love of movement inspired him to become this highly acclaimed Qigong and Pilates teacher that he is today. Stephen, welcome to the Soulfull Sound Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Simone. Great to be here with you. Thanks.
Yes, I'm so excited. Recently, in fact, I was saying to some of my sound healing students, "Oh, guess what? I'm going to have this Qigong master on my podcast soon," because very often, well, in fact, we always do it, but I don't practice Qigong in any big way. But as a sound healer and a sound healing tutor, we were taught to start our practice with certain exercises to get the energy flowing and protection flowing and all of the things for the type of energy work that we do. So I've been super excited and anticipating this conversation. Like, yes, I'm going to speak to someone who knows a lot more than me about how this movement can be so beneficial. Super.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. So I'm going to jump straight in with your book because I know that that's something that just recently came out in the last few months. Congratulations, by the way. I know what it's like to bring things into the world the way you have. So I'm really excited to jump straight in. So tell us what really inspired you to write this book, Recovering You? What brought that book into being?
What brought the book into being? Well, first, let me go back a little bit. Before there was Recovering You, the book, there was an online course that I made back in about 2018, I think. It was called Release, Recover, and Renew. And it was an online course that contained a lot of the elements that you find in the book. And when I created that course, something inside of me told me that that was just the beginning of the conversation. That was just the beginning of the exploration of that work, and that there was going to be some other way to bring forth this material in a way that's different from that online course. I've always wanted to share a lot of the tools that I teach in the book with people, especially after Qigong entered my life when I was in Chinese medicine school for a period of time, and how impactful that medicine was on me. And I don't think it was an accident that was an incredibly stressful time for me, a time where I felt so overwhelmed by the experience of being in graduate school at 40 something years old. And I felt as though I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to stay sober through that process, because so much emotion was coming up for me. And the medicine of Qigong was just remarkable in the way that it came into my life at that time. It allowed me to release tension in my body that was building up because I was under so much stress and strain. And then also it helped me to just move that emotional energy, and it helped clear my mind. So I was able just to think more clearly. And then on top of that, just being able to learn the practice in a group of people, because community is such an important part of our well-being. I talk about it in the book, how social support is so important, and just community and connection is important, because we're tribal beings.
Yes.
You know, we're meant to be connected, much like what you do with your sound healing students and community. There's something that's special that happens when one person meets another and you share the medicine like that.
Yes.
So I knew that from that moment on, if the medicine could do what it did for me at that point in my life, that I had to share it with others. And part of me wished I knew what I was learning at that time 10 years earlier when I first got sober.
Yeah.
But the teacher and the medicine comes when the student is ready.
Do you feel called to use your voice and sound in a healing capacity? Learn how to use your voice therapeutically to facilitate healing and well-being. Whether you want to go deeper in your own healing journey or facilitate others in theirs, this training is for you. This online training runs over 5 weekends and offers theory, practice, resources, and support on your path to becoming a qualified sound healer and for your personal healing journey. Oh, yes.
And I was definitely ready at that time. So that is a bit of what helped bring Recovering You into form.
Yes, and I love the name of your course. It's the 3 R's really. And I have the 3 R's in so many different things. It's like we learn about this in school, but I really like that. Is that course still running, or is that now transformed into the book? Do you still have that?
The course is no longer still running. It's transformed into the book, but at some point I think I'm going to go back and recreate it.
Yes.
And using more of the formalized structures that I created within the book.
Yes, I can imagine that.
Everybody stay tuned.
Yeah, that would be a really powerful medium, I think, to kind of drive home a lot of the messages that you have in the book. And of course, you've taken that and you've built so much on top of the foundation. There's just so much more to share as well now. So this is incredible. So obviously we're saying Qigong, we're talking about this. You spoke about your journey there. Can we just talk very briefly about what that is for anyone listening who's never heard of it or doesn't know? What is Qigong?
Qigong is an ancient Chinese healthcare system that combines flowing movements, standing postures, deep breathing, and focused intention to activate, cultivate, and circulate life force energy. And what is that life force energy? It's the energy that's behind the beating of our heart.
Yes.
It animates everything that we do. It's the energy behind our emotions and also behind our consciousness, right? And our connection to the divine. So when you take the word Qigong and you break it down in half, Qi means energy and breath, and Gong means work or skill. So the practice of Qigong is a practice of becoming more skillful at managing our own energy. So we can all become masters of our own energy.
Yes.
And that's what Qigong is in a nutshell.
Yes, I love that description and that definition. It's very well broken down. And I know that in your book, you do offer Qigong exercises at the end of all of the chapters. Is that just part of embodying what you've shared in theory so that people can have that experience to support the transformation you're providing?
Absolutely. I think it's important to integrate teachings through the body. When I think back to just my whole experience in recovery, from 12-step recovery to all the therapy that I've done, all the books that I've read, it all approaches it more from the mind, and even a bit from the emotions, but not down to the tissues of the body.
Yeah.
And I felt like it's important to bring the body into the equation formally. It's always a part of the equation anyway, because you can't separate the body from the mind and the spirit. But I felt as though in a lot of this work, it's just something that's left out. And what I've come to understand over time is that the body keeps the score, like Bessel van der Kolk says in his famous book about trauma.
Yes.
And so you have to pay attention to the body, because it is a keeper of the records of what's happened to us. And we feel everything and we absorb everything on a cellular level, and it affects the body as well as the mind and the brain. So I wanted people to have an opportunity to take the teachings from the book and integrate it in their body. And for a moment, let go of thought and really just tap into body and the sensations and just see what happens, because there's an amazing thing that happens when the medicine is activated within us, because we all have this internal wisdom and this healing power within the body, but it has to just be allowed to turn on. And what turns it on is when we're able to drop into that flow state where we can connect to the breath and the movement in the present moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought that when I included it in the book, every time when I was writing and I got to the end of the chapter and I started to introduce the exercise for that chapter, it automatically took me back to my time in Chinese medicine school when moments before I walk into the classroom, I was crying in my car or having a panic attack because I was so worked up because of all the emotions I was feeling. And
Yes.
then I would start the practice in class, and suddenly all that would dissipate
Yes.
and work through me. And I would leave the experience of the practice in the class and feel elevated. And so
Yes.
what I wanted to do is provide that for the readers of the book. And I provide that also in my online membership community, the SWE Studio. I want to give people tools that they can use to help themselves build a more conscious and joyous life
Yes.
from movement, because
Mm.
that is the foundation of the body is the foundation for the mind and the spirit.
Mm. Beautiful. I love that. The somatic practice. And I mean, emotions, I always talk about emotions in my work as energy in motion, emotion. And when we can realize that different states of being, as you said, we can feel those in our body or in our energy system, then movement and breath and all of these things is such a powerful way to help us move through. And it's something that has to move. Even if we didn't move, the energy has to move. So wow, that completely would transform a practice, I think. I'm really excited. Bells are going off in my head about things that I've seen and all these movements. And I want to actually jump into, I'm a complete novice in this field of Qigong. So I'm going to ask you about certain things with related to Qi or energy centers, because for example, some of the movements that we're doing, I've been explained that, okay, you lift your toes off the ground in this point, or make sure that your palms are straight as you bring your arms down, very specific things, or particular mudras and things. So I'm curious if there if there is any one thing or two things that you think this one simple thing that you can do with your body right now will help you change your state. It doesn't have to be like a full exercise or you get up and demonstrate, but if there's just one thing that we can
Mm.
do, whether that's in the breath or the body, that we could do to change our state, what would that be?
Couple of different things. Always it's good to connect with the breath. That's one of the things that I love about Qigong. Qigong is a practice that's accessible to everyone. We can
Mm-hmm.
all do it. And it's a practice that is highly adaptable. So no matter what your physical condition is,
Yes.
you can still receive the benefits of the practice. And we can all breathe, right?
Yes.
So that we start by just placing your hands on the belly
Mm.
and just taking a deep breath in through your nose. And as you inhale, just allow your belly to expand.
Mm.
And as you exhale out through your nose, allow your belly to soften. And if
Mm.
you can do that by breathing in for, say, 5 counts, and then find that little hold in the breath, and then exhale out through your nose for 5 counts, and then find that little hold after the exhale. Doing that 5 to 10 times is a
Mm.
way to regulate your nervous system
Yes.
and bring you to the present moment.
Yes.
We're able to shift out of that fight or flight freeze state,
Mm-hmm.
which turns on a particular part of the brain, and it releases these hormones that make us ready to act and respond to danger.
Yep.
But oftentimes we're not in the danger that our body is telling us that we're in.
Yes.
So we can just turn that off, which allows another part of the brain, which is the part of the brain that allows us to look at things more logically or with reason,
Mm.
turn that on and help us to navigate those difficult situations that we find ourselves in. So
Yes.
starting with the breath is a really simple way to connect to one's own energy. And then
Yes.
also I love to tap. So tapping on
Mm.
the chest with soft fists is a great way to activate chi within the body.
Mm.
Tapping on the corner of the chest just below your collarbone. Doing the same thing on the other side.
Mhm.
And then if you just place your arms down, you can even close your eyes for a moment and just tune into the energy of your body. That will shift your energy in some subtle but yet profound way. And just little things like that have the
Beautiful.
ability to take us where we are in the moment
Yes.
and help us to transition to another point in time, and oftentimes make our body feel more grounded and comfortable where we are,
Mm.
and also our mind as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm so glad that you demonstrated a few things, because these things are so simple to do yet so profound. You know, I do a lot of tapping myself, whether it is the thymus tap or just tapping techniques. And it's incredible what can shift with just a few things, somewhat understanding the energetic map of the body, but even just intuitively sometimes doing things can be such a profound way of releasing and letting go. And like you said, going from, you know, having a panic attack or crying in your car to getting up and moving out and being able to do something, that's an incredible shift to make in a short space of time. Anyone could do some of these exercises, starting with the
Absolutely.
breath. Yeah.
Yeah, and to anyone who's listening or watching, and you think about a moment where you feel overwhelmed by life, and that
Mm.
happens to all of us. We all experience stress. We can't get away from it, and there's a certain amount of stress that's healthy for us. But when you feel that moment of overwhelm, if you could just
Mm.
take a moment to connect to your breath, that has an incredible potential and power to change how you feel. Or if you're in a situation where you just need to take a moment to yourself, go to the bathroom, be
Yes.
by yourself for a moment, take a few deep breaths, tap on your body,
Mm.
notice how you feel afterwards, walk back into that situation that a moment earlier was overwhelming for you, and
Yeah.
perhaps you'll better be able to manage your feelings in that situation, just because you are more connected to yourself and who you are, your essence, and at
Yes.
the core of yourself, and be able to move from there.
Yes, that's beautiful. And as you speak about the core of yourself, I know that you speak about recovering from addiction as returning to self. So
Mhm.
tell me a bit more about that.
Well, when you're in the throes of addiction and you are responding to life by turning to substances or behaviors uh, to change the way that you feel, there's a natural disconnection from yourself, right? I
Mm.
know for me, when I was when I was drinking, when I was doing drugs, when I was smoking, there was a desire, and it wasn't even a conscious desire, to escape how I was feeling, to check out, to numb myself. And when
Mm.
we numb ourselves, we're not living life fully. I think there can also be an illusion that we're living fully, because if I, for me, I thought, oh, I have a few drinks in me, I can join the party, I could interact with people, I could just live it up, and I feel connected. But within that, there is a disconnection, because
Mhm.
there's a part of me that's afraid of, if I show up to this moment truly as myself, will I be liked? Will I be able to navigate that moment authentically as myself?
Yeah.
During those times, I didn't think I could, so I did A, B, or C.
Mhm.
So that's active addiction. But the great thing about recovery is we have an opportunity to shift that. When we enter recovery, we are able to gain support from others to help us to live a life that's healthier, that's more balanced,
Mhm.
that is more authentic to who we really are, when you peel away all the layers of armor and
Yes.
our defenses, and we're able to recover the parts of ourselves that we traded off or lost, because really it is a trade-off, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we're also able to discover parts of ourselves that maybe we didn't even know about. That's one of the exciting things about recovery, is that we gain so much, and sometimes what we gain are things that we never even imagined that we could get just by stopping a behavior and maybe adopting new behaviors, new approaches to life, allowing information and support and people in, and getting really honest about who we are and where we are and how we're feeling, and being open to suggestions and other tools and other practices that can help support a life that is that's better.
Yeah. And I know for many, really getting, as you say, back in touch with that core essence of who you truly are is not an easy journey for most. I mean, I think it's, for many people, a very long quest of peeling back layers and layers and layers. And I think it's really probably fundamentally the cause of a lot of things, this disconnect from self, right? It's just the cause of so many issues that we're having in the world, whether it's personally going on in our bodies or our own energy systems, or even the reflection globally. It's this massive disconnect. So I love that, as you talk about coming back to that authentic part of you and accepting all the parts of you, and bringing that together, how powerful and impactful it could be. And I'm curious, in your own journey, because I know that you've been sober from drugs and alcohol now for 20 years or 20 plus years. What was your recovery journey, kind of coming back to self, and maybe some of the important things that you learned along the way in your journey?
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. I also want to add to something else that you said a moment ago. One of the things that gets in the way of us returning to self and getting in the way of that process is shame. I mean, something that we all can identify with, this thought or this feeling, this belief that we are somehow damaged goods and not worthy of change or transformation.
Yes.
So it's definitely a process of peeling back the layers of that, seeing what the truth really is, and then getting some positive support to help move out of that. So my recovery journey, it began 20 years ago, and I'm really grateful for the fact that I've been in recovery and sober for 20 years. But really, it's all about today and what I do today for my recovery. Because just because I've been sober for 20 years doesn't mean that tomorrow I can't pick up a drink again.
Of course, yeah.
And then lose it all. Lose what I've worked so hard to accomplish and achieve, and to be in the state that I'm in now, that I think is a good place to be.
Yes.
But my recovery journey, like I said earlier, or maybe I didn't say it. Is I came from a background, a family, a situation where there was a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma in my household growing up, and a lot of damaged, hurt people. And they dealt with it the best way they knew how, but a lot of it was through substances themselves, through anger, and so many layers to it. And being a sensitive child that I was, I absorbed all of that. All of that. And when your caretakers are preoccupied in their own stuff and mismanaging it all, there's not a lot of support for you. So you have to find ways to self-regulate and self-soothe. And for me, it was like biting my nails and rocking myself to sleep at night, or eating, and just in order to find some way to feel okay in this body.
Yeah.
So by the time I had my first drink at the age of 15, I was in Germany dancing with my dance teacher and some other members of the dance school. So last night that we were there, I had my first beer, And I remember feeling like I could finally breathe. I could finally breathe once that beer was down inside of me, even though I hated the taste of it. But it made me feel better in my body. It made me feel more comfortable in my own skin. It made me feel like I could connect to people, get out of my introversion and be more extroverted.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I was smart and funny and all that other stuff. And actually, it made me feel sexy, which was important for me as a 15-year-old coming into my sexual being.
Yes.
And also I was at that time starting to come out to myself, at least, that I was gay.
Yeah.
So it was very meaningful. And I knew that I wanted to feel that feeling again. And so basically that amazing feeling I had that first time and that first night when I got totally drunk, I chased that feeling for years.
Yeah.
And with varying results. Sometimes I would be able to achieve that and sometimes I wouldn't. And then I threw in other substances like drugs into the mix as well in order to play chemistry and try to lift myself up when I was feeling sad, or if I was feeling good, to make myself feel even better.
Right.
And so I did that for a long time without great consequence. Although there were some things that happened along the way where one night I drank and did so many drugs that I literally lost my sight for a period of time that night.
Wow.
And you would think that that would be enough to scare me into not ever doing that again. But, probably the next night or that next week, I was at it again. That should have been a warning sign that my relationship to substances was not casual,
Right.
normal.
Yeah.
And I kept going along that path. And like I said, there weren't tremendous consequences. There were some, but there were enough to really shake my foundation. And it wasn't until I was 29 and I had a lot of success come into my life around my work as a dancer in New York. And I eventually started dancing for organizations like the Metropolitan Opera and New York City Opera, and then on to Disney's The Lion King. And all this stuff was happening. I had a partner at the time who I was in a relationship with that I loved them dearly, but it didn't feel like we were meant to be together. And I didn't know how to express that. I didn't know how to walk away. I kept it inside. I stuffed my feelings. Combined with these new successes and the new pressures from these work situations, I turned to alcohol and drugs to help me manage it all. Because really, in terms of my ability to cope with life and all that comes with it, that was my coping skill, that. So I did that, but I started to feel consequences.
Right.
I started to destroy relationships. I started to spend all my money on obtaining alcohol and drugs and things like that. I started to distance myself from people. Like I would commit what I call disappearing acts from family and friends. And I got to a point where I would look in the mirror and I wouldn't recognize who was looking back at me. And that was really difficult. And I remember one night in my apartment in Toronto by myself, drunk and high on cocaine, just saying, help. That's all I said was help me. Yeah. And within about 6 months to a year, that help arrived. And it arrived in a way that was like any other night where I was partying and lost myself in that. And then I remember going to a theme park with some friends the next day, hungover, and I had a therapist that I would see, and we would have phone sessions. And I remember talking to the therapist that day while I was at the theme park. Don't ask me why I didn't cancel the appointment. But in that session, and it didn't last very long because he could not understand why I would make a choice like that, it became clear to me that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And this person sees me and sees what's going on. And later on that day, I called a friend of mine who's been in recovery for a long time and made sobriety look really good. And I told him what was going on. I'd never been that honest with anyone. And he took me to my first 12-step meeting. And that was the beginning of this journey that I've been on for the last 20 years. That has been a process of me learning how to live life on life's terms. Because I wasn't very good at living life on life's terms. I'm still challenged by it, but I know that I don't have to, when things happen in life that I don't like, that I have trouble navigating through, I don't have to leave my body in order to deal with it. I don't have to destroy my body in order to deal with it and to find some level of acceptance. So that's the essence of what the last 20 years have been like for me. And I wouldn't trade any of it for anything.
Yeah. Wow, what a story. Well, first of all, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable in your share, because I think a lot of people who could potentially be going through this right now watching will hopefully find some inspiration to know that you kind of would say hit rock bottom in some shape or form for you, and there's a way out. And what I've heard in that story, there are a few nuggets that, not necessarily as a formula, but certain as a maybe a thread to hold on to throughout the journey, was recognizing first and foremost that you're not okay, noticing that in yourself. The second was asking for help, and that might have been help to, I don't know, divine intervention, to your therapist, to people around you, and then being inspired by someone else's success, your friend who you saw who was sober, and you were like, oh, okay, so this is possible. So there's this element for me of, you know, surrendering and asking for support, and then being inspired, that thread that carried you through that story to get to the beginning of this recovery, which obviously you know, I'm sure there's so many nuggets in there that we can pull out.
And I feel as though what I just shared with you and the way that you beautifully reflected that back to me is woven through recovering you. Just inviting people to get really honest with themselves.
Yes.
And to be able to identify what's happening within them.
Yes.
To asking for help. If you are holding the book in your hands and reading it, that is an act of reaching out for help, trying to pull in some inspiration, some guidance, some wisdom.
Yes.
And then also connecting with others, because I wanted to create a community within the pages of the book. Because I tell my story, I also invite my friends in recovery to share their experience, strength, and hope as well, hoping that one of our voices will touch the reader. Yes. And make them feel like they're not so alone, and that there is a way out.
Yes, and I think that's so important, because often, no matter where we are in our trauma or discomfort or challenge, there are times that we're like, oh, well, that's okay for that person, you know, that they can do it, or that's fine, that's not me. And I think that what you've clearly said and shown and demonstrated is that, that's where you were back then, and yet you were able to somehow make that step into, I need help. I don't recognize this person that I'm looking at, you know, in the mirror. And I love those really poignant moments that you've described so beautifully. So
Thank you.
You're touching on things that are really important. And there's an element in your book, I know the subtitle is Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. And so soul care, I love that. You could have said self-care, but you said soul care. And not that self-care is not important, but I'm pretty sure those words are intentional. So what is soul care, and why is that part important in your book and your work?
Beautiful. Soul care is really anything that we do that tends to the health and the well-being of our soul. And all the practices in the book I consider to be soul care, whether they are tending to the needs of the body, or the emotions or the mind or the spirit. And
Yeah.
that's really what each practice, each suggestion in the book does.
Yes.
And a lot of the book is taught, or a lot of the healing practices in the book are coming in and through the body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to just, again, make the point that the body is the foundation for all the other energies within the body.
Yes.
Without the body, we wouldn't have the others. So the
Mm-hmm.
body is what houses it all.
Yeah.
And so every single practice in the book is soul care.
Yeah. That's beautiful. What is your definition of soul?
My definition of soul, it is that part of us that we all have that is this representation of who we are.
Mm.
Once we've peeled back all the layers,
Mm.
it is a representation of who we are at the most, on an energetic level,
Mm-hmm.
in the most refined,
Mm.
vibrant way.
Mm.
And it's that part of us that connects to each other
Mm.
and the universe, where there are no boundaries, there's no separation.
Mm.
It's just this flow from one to another and then back.
Beautiful. I love that. I know that with a lot of these words can't really describe the energy of what it is that what it actually represents. And I think that's really beautiful, this being in the flow with this universal consciousness and energy and connection. There are a lot of beautiful things in that. And yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So again, I'm coming back to your book, and then I actually want to ask you about dance and movement. So in the book, you talk about, as we're on the topic of soul, trusting in this higher power, and that for you, that didn't come naturally in early recovery. So how did you move beyond that? And what words of wisdoms maybe now you have to offer others struggling with this themselves?
Well, I think that my experience around connecting to a higher power was an interesting journey. And I think what I've mentioned in the book is that I came from a background that was very religious, and thought of God, or thought of God as in a certain way.
Hmm.
And for me, that way of looking at God was very rigid and limiting, and it wasn't very inclusive.
Hmm.
I knew for me, as a young person, knowing that I was different, that I was different than the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel as though in those environments, those houses of worship, that there was space for me.
Mm.
And I didn't quite know what to do with that.
Yeah.
But yet it was a situation where I was still encouraged to go and forced to go. And so when I found recovery, what my first sponsor said to me was like, well, you're actually in a pretty good position, because you already believe in something outside of yourself. That something is the thing that I asked for help that night in my bathroom in Toronto.
Mm.
But what was offered to me as I started to walk through those first days, weeks, months, years of recovery was the ability to come up with my own conception of a higher power.
Mm.
That I didn't even have to call it God if I didn't want to call it God.
Yeah.
I can call it my higher power. And that my higher power could be anything.
Mm.
It could be the universe. It could be nature. It could be
Mhm.
even the group that that I was a part of, that I showed up to and to be with each day when I would go to a meeting.
Yes.
That group of drunks could be
Mm.
my higher power, just in terms of the collective wisdom and consciousness of the
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
And so that was very powerful for me. And I was able to work with that,
Mm.
And it gave me permission to have conversations with my higher power that are like the conversation that I'm having with you right now. Just
Mm.
how easy it is, and how it
Yeah.
flows, and how it's incredibly loving and non-judgmental and kind.
Mm.
That's exactly what I needed. And in my recovery, I've also learned how to not even just have conversations where I'm telling my higher power what it is that I'm feeling or experiencing. And I don't even think I need to say it out loud. I think when I say things out loud to my higher power, it's more so I can hear myself,
Yes.
because I feel like it intuitively, it knows.
Mm.
But it also, part of the process is also for me to get quiet and still and listen.
Yes.
Because if
Mm-hmm.
I get quiet and still and listen, I get messages as to what's the next right action for
Yeah.
me to take at any moment in my life.
Yes.
And so what that's been my journey. And I know
Mm.
that for some people, it's hard to wrap your mind around um, a God or a higher power. I think there's been a lot of misuse of the word God, and also I think there's a lot of people who've been put in authority figures, and we've poured a lot of trust
Mm-hmm.
into, that haven't really acted on um, in the best interests of the people who've elevated them to certain positions of
Yeah.
power. And
Yeah.
so that has tainted this concept of God and higher power. So there's a lot to work through and unpack for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people to start from where they are
Mm-hmm.
with it, and that there's no rush, and there's no need for you to subscribe to anything that anyone else is telling you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
That's great.
one of the things that I offer in the book as a way to build a connection to this power that's outside of us, because I think that in recovery, the most important thing is that we understand that none of us are God, right? There's a God somewhere, but we know that it's not us, that we're not making the rainfall. We're not making the trees blow with the wind. We're not causing the earthquakes or anything like that individually. There's something that's greater than us. Even, you can look at even like music or love as a higher power, and the
Mm-hmm.
energy of that, those things that have such great influence and power, just connecting to that. But I teach this practice called breath prayers in the book, where you just take the physiological act of breathing, and then you add intention to it, and it
Mm-hmm.
allows us to build a level of optimism and trust and peace within us, where as you inhale, you think of something that you would like more of in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, oftentimes, because I work to manage anxiety, I envision drawing in peace with my inhale.
Mm-hmm.
And as I exhale, I try to release fear or worry. And I inhale peace, and I exhale fear or worry.
Mm.
So you're just calling in whatever it is that you need, knowing that what you need is available to you,
Yes.
just a breath away,
Yeah.
just a breath away. So I feel
Yes.
like those are simple steps that one can start to take to shift their consciousness around higher power.
Yes. That's awesome. And I very much relate to the conversations. I do that a lot myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's through, as you said, verbalizing internal or journaling. I just I feel like there's just so much that can come. And I do think that it really starts with the want to know, the want to sense, the being receptive to hearing and then listening and then acting. There's like a few steps in that. When we really can go in and connect with that guidance, how beautiful things can unfold from there. I think you answered my secondary question, but I'm still going to just ask just to make sure there's nothing else on the end of it.
Okay.
You mentioned your journey from the beginning of, you said you weren't necessarily as connected then, and then you looked at all these different things. What is your kind of go-to now? Because you are in relation, you have a strong relationship now with that higher power. So what is like, Stephen wakes up in the morning, what's that in your day that allows you to connect now that you've gone through so many different practices?
A lot of different things. When I wake up in the morning, one of the things that I do is I read some sort of prayer that's related to recovery.
Yes.
And I have an app on my phone that has a morning prayer, and I've been reading this morning prayer for 20 years.
Amazing.
Pretty much. And there's also an evening prayer that I read too. And then I also read other inspirational messages that I get sent to me, other little books that I have that are recovery related. And recovery to me is spirituality, the second expression of spirituality. So I get to tap into that. I tap into my breath too every morning. And we have two cats, and I swear interacting with my two cats, Obi and BB, connects me to spirit. Because there's so much love in the room when I'm with them, and it's all genuine. There's nothing in the way, and it's so about the moment, so present.
Yes.
So those are ways that I connect to it. Also, my movement practices. I always practice some sort of movement in my day. And another way that I connect to my higher power is through recovery meetings. I still go to recovery meetings. I don't necessarily go every day, but I do go every week. I do go to a few meetings, and that's a way for me to connect to my higher power, because I feel as though my higher power works through people and messages. So I pay attention to all that. Nature is another way for me to tap into it. Just looking out and seeing a bird flying through the sky has that power. And then when I get quiet at the end of the night and I sit in my bed, I turn the lights down low because my husband's generally sleeping right next to me. So I get quiet and I meditate, and I just try to just be present in the moment with myself, with my energy. And those are the things that feed me every day.
Yes. So I have one more question around the book, and this particularly, you mentioned it before, but I actually feel like it's important to bring it back because there are a lot of people who might need help here, or definitely need help here, but those listening, about shame. Shame being the linchpin in this addiction journey. So how do we loosen shame's grip on our lives? How do we, because you mentioned that being an obstacle for us to come back to that reconnecting with ourselves. Talk to me about the shame and how we can let go of that.
Well, I think when it comes to shame, I think it's important to begin to listen to yourself, tap into yourself, check in with yourself, and notice what you're feeling when something triggers shame within you.
Yes.
And to know what happens to you. Is it that you feel like a twisting in your gut? Is it your heart starts to race? Do you start to sweat? Do you feel clammy? Does your throat get dry? All the different things that can happen to us, because I do believe that there is a connection between the emotions and the body. There's a physiological thing, or between the mind, because usually it's a thought fuels the emotions, and then also there's the physical response. So getting sensitive to that, anyone who feels that they're steeped in shame, it's important to work with someone to help guide you through that journey. Working with a therapist has always been very helpful for me, in terms of learning to identify shame and learning to unpack it, and develop tools and strategies around it. In my recovery, having the relationship that I've had with my sponsor has been a wonderful way for me to work through shame, because I've been able to be so honest with them about what I'm feeling. And I've said this before in the book, and I also have said it before in other videos that I've made. Brene Brown says that shame needs three things to survive: silence, secrecy, and judgment.
Yes.
When we keep shame a secret, when we don't talk about it, it just sits in the dark and it begins to fester and grow. So it's important to share it, but you're not going to share it with just anybody.
Yeah.
Right? People have to earn the right or the privilege of hearing that deep part of yourself.
Yes.
So we have to be very discerning about that. And then being in the presence of someone who can listen and hold space for you in that very tender time and not judge you. When that happens often enough, you can develop a level of compassion for yourself and non-judgment of yourself over time. And that's an important aspect of healing shame. And it's important to know that everybody experiences it.
Of course.
There's no one on the planet that doesn't have some level of shame or hasn't had it at some point. So it's good to know that we're all in very good company.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and just being discerning, as you say, with who you feel called to share with, I think that that's a really important factor. You don't always get it right, but when we do, that support is invaluable. If you're sharing with someone who's also going through an equal amount of shame, that kind of paddleball reflection may not be helpful. But definitely being discerning, as you said, you spoke to your sponsor or people who we're already on the road to recovery. And I often like to think of, when I work with anyone, as long as they're one step ahead of me, there's something that I can learn. It doesn't always have to be, okay, this person has done an amazing job 20 years on, and so they know what they're talking about. If you're one step ahead of me, you can help me get from where I am to where you are. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So important.
It is. And we're all works in progress. We're all unfolding. And just because the person that you look towards for support might be a step ahead of you, or even if they're 20 steps ahead of you, they're still going through their stuff.
Yes,
exactly. Still navigating life.
Yes,
exactly. I mean, I look at me in this book, I think that it's easy to be in the kind of position that I'm in, where people can project a certain thing onto me. And it's just important to know that I'm just a person.
Yes.
Just like everybody else. And I'm just trying to figure this life thing out as well.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Maybe I'm a step or two in a different place than where you are.
Yes.
But
Exactly. Yeah. So beautiful. So I'd love to know about movement. Do you still dance? I know you're obviously doing your Qigong and your Pilates. Tell me about the dance. Are you still moving in that way?
Well, I'm not a professional dancer anymore. I hung up my dancing shoes back, I think it was 2009. I think I did. I think I hung up my shoes. But I've danced over the years in my husband's music videos.
I did see that. Yes. That's amazing.
But I've recently, maybe like a year ago, I retired from those too. I've danced in my membership community, the SWE Studio. I teach dance classes there.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so that's been a great way for me to express that part of myself. I'll always dance.
Yes.
I love music. I love dance. I'll always be connected to that part, because that was really the first the first energy work I ever did was
Yeah, of
dancing.
course. Yeah.
I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so it stayed with me, and I think it will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Mm,
Yeah, and I always
beautiful.
encourage people to find a way to dance, to find a way to smile and laugh,
Yeah.
because those things have the ability to really shift energy,
For
to
sure.
move blocked energy and to get things to flow,
Yes.
and to give us more energy as
For
well.
sure, for sure. I mean, one of
Yeah.
my best friends and I, we have a kind of a lovely practice around that. She's
Mhm.
always traveling, and every now and then we'd message each other randomly in a day and say 5 minute dance. And we jump on Zoom and put a track on and just dance for 5 minutes and go, love ya, and back into it. And we do that all the time. It's just amazing. I just think, one, changing the state, but also that joy that we cultivate and the sisterhood. There's just so many elements to it. But I love it. I'm from the Caribbean. We like to move our waist and hips, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
trust me, I completely dig the movement and the dancing. And I love that is that you've mentioned that as medicine, because for me that is medicine. Sound and singing and using my voice is medicine. We have so much medicine available to us.
We do, and I think one of the things that's important to point out, and what we're describing and talking about, is
Mm.
these activities where there's community. There's
Yes.
community, like you're talking about getting on a Zoom and doing that with your friend.
Yes.
I'm talking about doing it, like, for me, at a ecstatic dance class, or creating a class for my community, even though they're not in the room with me. The
Yes.
folks who are part of my SWE studio community, they're with me. And so
Yeah.
we're exchanging energy. And
Yes.
that's really important. It's really
Mm.
important um, in creating better mental health for each and every one of us, to feel connected, because no one gets through
Yes.
this life alone.
No, no,
Mhm.
we don't.
Mhm.
What sound do you love, Stephen? What sound?
Ooh, what sound do I love? I love our cats purring. I love that sound that they make when they purr. I love that. I love I love some of the healing sounds that I do in Qigong. There are
Mm.
healing sounds that help us to um, clear energy in the organs.
Mm.
Yeah, and also to help yeah, basically to clear energy, to move energy in the organs and in the meridians. They're beautiful sounds and so simple. Would you like to hear some of them?
I would. I was just going to say, am I going to get a
Yeah.
taste? Yes.
Yeah. So there's, for the metal element, which is connected to the lungs and the large intestine,
Mhm.
that sound is like S's
Mm.
strung together, like air going out of a tire, right? And we
Mm.
can even apply that to movement. So let's see. You'll take your arms and you'll
Yep.
bring them down to your lap, and they're rounded and your palms are facing up. You're
Yes.
going to lift your arms up, and then your palms are going to press up towards the sky. And then you're going to float your arms down. And then your palms are going to face your chest, and slowly float the arms down to your lap. Let's take a deep
Mm.
breath in through your nose as you lift your arms. And then release the breath out with that sound as you lower them. And again. Let's do it
Mm.
one more time. Just
Ah.
relax with your hands on your lap. Just keep your eyes closed for a second and just notice what you feel. You might even feel a vibration in your body. Beautiful.
Can
Healing sounds
feel
of
definitely there's warmth around my chest. It feels I could feel
mm,
this temperature shift, warm, almost like a balm of like if you put Vicks or some kind of menthol. It feels really like open and yeah, vibrant is a great feeling there. Oh, I love
uh,
it.
that's so good.
I
So
know.
yeah, so the emotion associated with the lungs is sadness, depression.
Yes.
So you can
Yes.
think about releasing that with every
Mm.
exhale and then filling yourself up with whatever it is that you need on the inhale. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I have to say, I just love all of this. I want to do more, and I am going to jump into your community and check it out because I know you've got your monthly your membership as well. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to jump into that.
Yeah, and I invite others to jump into it too. The SWE
Yes.
studio is a affordable, accessible wellness community that
Mm,
I've created. There's over 300 plus videos that are
amazing.
in varying lengths. Some of them are full classes, like an hour, and then some of them are 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon how much time you have, because we all are busy people,
Of
right? And I
course, of course.
combine Pilates and Qigong in one class in a really fun, creative way. There's also meditation, dance,
Mm, mm,
laughter, and so much more, only for $22 a month. I mean, think
amazing.
about it, $22, that's 4 Starbucks drinks
Yeah,
in a month.
exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And
Yeah,
healthier for you.
yeah.
Where can people find you online, Stephen?
Yeah, StephenWashingtonExperience.com is my website. There you'll be able to access links to buy my book, Recovering You.
Brilliant.
Also links to check out my membership community, SWE Studio, and then also access to my Facebook, YouTube, Instagram,
Yes.
TikTok, Medium, where you can find all of the stuff that I've created and put out there into the world, and a lot of it is free.
Oh, wonderful. And of course, I will put all of those links below this episode as well, so it's all easily accessible. Thank you so much for being with me today and being so yummy and open and just lovely, lovely, lovely energy. I so appreciate you and all the work that you're doing to help people overcome, well, rather, let's say to help people in recovery and helping everyone navigate towards health and happiness. Stephen, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Simone. And I also want to say that this work is for people in recovery, no matter where you are on your recovery
Yes.
journey, but it's also great for people who love people who are in recovery because we
Yes.
all need support. We all need
Yes,
support. We all need self-care practices. It's been
for
such a joy
sure.
to be with you. You are just absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much. I like to end all of my conversations with the same question, and that is, what is your soulful sound to the world? And that is a self prayer or desire that you wish upon the world.
A simple sigh.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank
I'll
you.
see you soon.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share it with your friends and remember to subscribe. From my heart to yours, sending you love, healing, and sound wherever you are.